Dr. Andrew Kaufman is an associate professor and landscape specialist for the University of Hawaii. His educational background consists of a bachelor's degree in ornamental horticulture from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, master's degree in landscape architecture from the University of Arizona, master's degree in sociology from Iowa State University, and a PhD in horticulture from Washington State University. His landscape designs have won awards in Arizona, California, Hawaii, Iowa, and Washington State. He currently heads the Tropical Landscape and Human Interaction Lab, which is a multidisciplinary lab focused on investigating how plants affect people socially, psychologically, and physiologically, and implications on landscape design. He currently teaches courses in landscape architecture, arboriculture practices, and human issues in horticulture at the University of Hawaii. Dr. Kaufman, thank you for joining us for Classroom Well-Being, an apple or plant for teacher makes a better environment to teach and learn in. Dr. Kaufman.
Aloha, thank you so much. It's really exciting to be here today. And I'll go ahead and start my screen. If anyone has any questions as I'm talking, please just open your mic and let me know. And if not, I'll answer questions afterwards. Okay, so today, as I said, my title of my talk is Classroom Wellbeing, an apple or plant for a teacher makes a better environment to teach and learn in. So I have a lot to share with you today, so we'll get going. So as I said that my lab actually draws upon horticulture, sociology, environmental psychology, and landscape architecture, and really looking to understand the connection between plants and people and how that can be affected for design, policy making, and the whole green industry at large. So I really think that experiences are really the key to success. And the main experience is education. And as we all know, education comes in many different forms, but it's really a foundation upon which to build on. And experience is actually the true teacher to learn how to address each situation that you come in contact with. And also, I think hands-on is really important could be formal and informal or hands-on. I think it all matters. So again, I think experience, that's what I want to sort of talk about today. So, all right, so let's get back to the subject here about teaching, plants, and research, and hopefully it'll give you some more tools to use in your classroom. But very importantly, I think first we need to put on our green thinking caps. So I'll give you a couple seconds, let you put on your green thinking caps, and then I think we're ready to go. All right, so I feel that you are have your green thinking caps on, so let's do it. So plants and flowers in Hawaii are amazing. As you've already seen today, there's so many amazing aspects and opportunities within Hawaii, this green industry, especially with cut flowers, foliage, and plants in general. And both on the indoor and outdoor aspect, plants are very, very powerful in our society, our culture, our economics, and as well as our environment. So plants arrived what's called the 3 W's here in Hawaii: by wind, by waves, and by wings. But also plants arrived here through what's called canoe plants. And they were brought actually as planned needs for survival. Well, with all these sort of natural and human introductions, as our society have developed, the significance of plants are really powerful, both in plants and flowers. And this can be seen in Hawaii through kapa, medicine, building materials, spiritual, cultural aspect, and other practices. And one that's really popular is lei. And as we all know, lei is a gesture of aloha, which is really embodies the notion of love and respect. And it really is a distinctive part of our island culture, not only in the past, but in the present and also in the future. So with this, just one example of resources, CTAR has put out a publication called Hawaiian Ecosystems and Culture, and why growing plants for lei helps actually preserve Hawaii's natural and cultural heritage. This can be picked up from the CTAR website through publications, and it's free. So there's many, many others that have been published, but I just want to give you an example that there is resources out there to draw upon, besides all the amazing speakers today. So first I want to show you what we call show me the money. And the point of this is that our industry is extremely vibrant. If you look at cut flowers alone, in just 1 year, it generates over $13 million. Orchids over 22 million. Lay flowers over 3 million. Foliage is over 17 million. Potted flowering plants over 6 million. And then Betty plants, rentals, and other associated commodities about 30 million. So this is over $94 million in 1 year just from wholesale floriculture and nursery products in Hawaii. An update has been done to incorporate nursery, greenhouse, and floriculture in 2017, and now it's well over $100 million. So if you're using this with your students, besides gaining so many tools, enjoyment, and a curriculum, this is a really viable opportunity for them to do as a profession. So with this now, there's been a lot of research and anecdotal stuff about practical benefits of plants. And environmentally, we all know that they replenish oxygen, they can help prevent soil erosion, cool neighborhoods, and filter dust outside and even inside. But in addition to environmental aspects of plants, there's social and aesthetic qualities, as we see our young friend here in the bottom right. And they can be used to improve property value, provide a sense of community, foster a sense of well-being, and just create a really amazing environment, not only outside, but also inside. So I'd like everyone to look at this, and can someone tell me what this item is? Can someone unmute and just let me know what this is?
Tell him to get rolling.
Hey, Andy, is that a, let's see, let's see, is it an orchid?
Yeah, it's close to orchid. It is a hibiscus. And of course, hibiscus is very popular here in Hawaii, besides other plants. So I'd like everyone to take a deep breath. So take a deep breath in, let it out. I want everyone to close their eyes. So please close your eyes. And when I count to 3, on 3, I want you to open your eyes and just look directly at your screen and the presentation. Okay, so close your eyes. On 3, open them. 1, 2, 3. Okay, from the sounds I heard from being unmuted, I heard a lot of oohs and ahs and ees and oh, that's so cute. So what just happened, do you think? So we just saw a lot of pictures, and some of them were kind of scary and some of them were kind of cute and cuddly. And what this is biophilia. So I want everyone to say out loud, biophilia. So that's great. So biophilia literally means love of life or living systems. And this directly relates to Hawaii, our culture, and our idea of plants and the environment. So ideally, this comes down to what's called the biophilic hypothesis. And this really suggests that there's a real instinctive bond that we have as human beings with other living systems, especially the environment and plants. And E.O. Wilson, who's a professor at Harvard, suggests that this notion of biophilia, unlike phobias, which are things that we're scared of, really describes the connection. So the connection that human beings have subconsciously. So this is a subconscious connection that we seek with the rest of life. And with this, there's actually a human preference for nature, while refined through experiences and culture are hypothetically a product of biological evolution. So he says that this is sort of learned by culture and through experience, but also he's suggesting that through our long eons of time and learning that this has become part of our DNA. And think about why we might be attracted to nature, plants, and horticulture. So we talked about there's an economic thing, but if you really think about it, plants make us feel good. We can use them to build things with, and obviously we use them for food and also to food animals for our enjoyment and also for our sustenance. Okay, so with this, I want to kind of make it practical. And research has shown that there's actually human responses to vegetation has been captured through scientific studies. And this could be through reaction times that are quicker, deeper concentration, improved mood, lower blood pressure. There are so many things that are now been discovered over the past 25, 30 years. I just want to share a little bit of that with you and how that might apply to your students and to Hawaii. All right, so let's do some science. All right, so everyone's ready. You had that brief, deep breath, and now I think we're all ready to kind of focus, had a good lunch. So let's do it. So look at this picture, and can anyone just unmute and tell me, what do you see? What do you like here? So what do you see and what do you like in this picture?
I really like all the green.
Excellent, so lots of green. That's the number one question I get. So lots of green, anything else?
Flowers.
Good, so lots of flowers, there's color, there's water. It looks very serene, very calming. All right, so keep this in your mind. Now tell me what you think about this picture.
Yuck.
Okay, that's also the number one exact answer is yuck, and also ew and ah. So those are three really scientific responses that I seem to get all over the country. So yeah, so here we have, amazing signs, and it looks like, have some good deals at the Dollar Tree store here, but there's no trees here, there's no nature. And so how many of you did miss the green that we saw in that last picture, or the vegetation or the nature? So those are really two stark different pictures there. But think about, how about if you're being in this parking lot, and let's say maybe you're in Eva or in Kona or someplace similar, in August around 1:42 p.m. It would be super, super hot and really not comfortable. You'd want to holly right to those stores, get what you want, and holly back to your car again. So this is really not ideal for us. So let's kind of look into this deeper of how plants really affect us besides the yuck factor. So I want to talk about one study that was very significant in the early 80s, and this actually deals with health and human responses to vegetation. So a study actually compared recovery rates of gallbladder patients with ones that had a view of a room that had a picture of a tree or a view of a tree, and another view of a beautiful block wall. And what they did, they took all these people that had gallbladder surgeries. Some had half had view of a tree, half had a view of a room with a block wall, and they wanted to see what was really sort of different. And so they found out that the view of nature through the hospital room had many, many more positive effects than the people that were recovering from this surgery looked at a block wall. In fact, patients that had the view of the tree or nature required less pain medication. They had fewer complaints. They actually left the hospital sooner than the patients that had the view of the block wall. Now, this was significant because, one, the hospital loved it because they had a higher turnover so they could make more money. The patients loved it because they didn't have to pay too much because actually their days were shorter than the patients that had the view of the block wall. So to kind of encapsulate this in a very, very scientific manner, people that looked at the block wall weren't so happy. But people that had the view of nature in these hospital rooms were actually jumping for joy a lot faster than the block wall room people. All right, so there's been other studies too, and I think this is really appropriate for teachers, about mental response to vegetation. So some other researchers wanted to look at this notion that under increased demands for attention, fatigue may become very prevalent until restoration occurs. Now I think as teachers, educators, and workers in any situation, as well as students, this is very, very prevalent. So what these researchers did is they wanted to know if a view of nature from a dorm room actually impacted students' attention. So again, they had all these students, and some had views of nature outdoor from their door window, and some had just pictures or views of either rooftops or parking lots. And then they gave them a bunch of subjective and objective tests to see, if there's really a difference between the view of nature or without nature. And surprisingly, what they found out is that students with a view of nature were actually better able, so they were better able to direct their attention than those with no view of nature. And what they extrapolated out is that these students that had the view of nature actually did better in classes. they enjoyed their classes, and they actually were able to get done a little bit faster in their curriculum program than students that didn't have this view. So think about the impact of where you work and what views you have, or even at home, what views you have. This can have a significant effect on not only your mental, but your physiological responses. So talking about physiological responses, we hear a lot about color, especially with flowers. So here, lay is very important, but there's been a few studies with flowers, but really nothing with foliage. So I conducted a color study looking at people's emotional and physiological responses to different plants with colors. So I did this very simple. I did what was called a preference test. I showed people 52 different colors of trees and asked them just simply what they liked or didn't like. And at the bottom of the screen are examples of this. So people always say, oh, well, why did you use, computer graphics and not real trees? Well, other research showed that if you show real trees, people get kind of freaked out. They think it's GMO or gene therapy, and they have a hard time actually finishing the study. But if you do computer or drawing stuff, the brain for some reason puts it together and accepts it as being real. And so this seemed to be a viable way to test this. So of these 52 colors, it turned out that 11 colors consistently evoked very positive and very negative ratings. And again, people weren't told if they were flowers or if they were leaves. They were just told to look at this and tell me what they liked or didn't like. And what it shows here in this graph is that on the left, it's high is like and low is dislike. And then all the codes on the bottom are the different colors that were shown to people. And what it shows that actually people really preferred, or they had preference for reds and green trees, but not so much for browns and yellows and dark oranges. And so this really kind of exhibits the fact that people like kind of healthy things, because they commented that the other colors at the right side of the spectrum might have been dying or dead plants in the oranges and brown ranges. So then from here, wanted to look more at a physiological response. So instead of just asking people what they liked, I wanted to see how they actually responded physiologically. So people were shown, again, these tree images, but now in 18 different colors, and they were also asked a questionnaire. But the really exciting thing was that I recorded their physiological responses as they saw these trees. And so I use this thing called psychophysiology, and it measures what's called the action potential of the muscles that are from the neurons generating this potential in the muscles of the face and in the body. So for instance, before you actually smile or frown, these neurons are firing milliseconds before that. And so maybe if you had burritos or had a little bit of gas, you might be kind of frowning and smiling. And you say, well, how can you tell if it's a real smile or not? Well, the equipment that I use is able to discern what's called a Duchenne smile, which is the correct smile. And that's with different sequences of firing of facial muscles. So basically what happened in this two-part study is that they viewed these physiological responses while they were looking at these pictures, and I was recording them. And I looked at ECG, or heart rate, and this is an indicator of attention. I also recorded EEG, or brain alpha wave activity, and this is an indicator of wakeful relaxation. The next measure was EMG, or facial muscular reactions, and this is an indicator of what's called positive or negative valence from their facial expressions. And then GSR, or galvanic skin response, this is the indicator of arousal or calmness. And you can think about it when you're kind of sweaty and you get sweaty palms and stuff, this is a galvanic skin response. And then after we recorded these in live fashion, these physiological responses, we asked them a socio-demographic question, and then what they liked and what they didn't like as far as the trees they viewed. And here's a picture. You can see here, people are all hooked up, as we say, with the electrodes, but we like to say sensors. And these measures all those different aspects I just said. And as you can see, this person here is really happy. They're excited to go. And on the bottom left, you can actually see some of the real-time physiological readings for all those different aspects. Again, they're just looking at these pictures of static trees in these different colors. So I just wanted to share one response, and this is skin conductance. This is that notion of being calm or aroused. And we are measuring what's called millivolts on the left-hand side from -30 to 0. Above 0 would be arousing. anything below what all these colors of trees showed that are very calming. And this actually supports the research in the past 30 years that plants are very calming for people to be with, to interact with, and just to look at. But if you notice that on this yellow, this was almost arousing. And the hypothesis is that for yellow fruits and flowers back in the eastern savannas of South Africa, supposedly where humans evolved, most of the flowers and fruits are this color. So it goes back to what the earlier researcher said, that this could be an ingrained or an innate response, this reaction to nature and plants. Okay, so how are we doing? I know it's been a really long day, so maybe we need to get up and do a little stretch and stuff, but unfortunately, we have no time. We have to keep moving and grooving because they said I have to keep going. All right, so math. So just from the mics that are open, I heard a couple of gasps there. So math is really cool because, you know, we all, almost every night at the dinner table, we talk about algebra and multiplication, geometry, calculus. It's really important in our businesses, our classrooms, and throughout the world. But if we really want to be honest, what about math for most children? So I know when I was in school, I wasn't a super big math fan, and I'll leave it at that. But think about you. Were you like this when you're in school, or maybe even now? Or are you on the other spectrum? Were you like this when you're in school or even now? And then for your students, where do they end up? So I thought about this a lot, and I thought about plants because I love working with plants. And I thought, well, let's do a study to see if there's any kind of difference here, or if there's an effect. So I did a pilot study that developed if indoor plants, specifically potted plants in high school math classrooms, would have an effect. And we wanted to specifically look at academic test scores and social behaviors. And the study was conducted at a Hawaiian high school that was located in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. And the math classes were selected since math is generally a subject that causes a little bit of stress in many students. And also, one of my best friends from college was actually a math teacher at the school, so that kind of helped things out. So the students' standardized math test scores, as well as classroom disciplinary reports, were looked at and analyzed, along with student and teacher self-reports that were measured. So how we did this is that we collected data from a semester before the plants were in the classroom, a semester during when the plants were in the classroom, and a semester after the plants were in the classroom. And we used 5 different math classrooms in the same school. Classrooms were roughly about 25 or 25, and they were all physically similar except for one that had no windows. And students in each classroom were of mixed standings from freshmen to seniors, and they were from pre-algebra to trigonometry, and there was about 60 total in this study. So plants were placed approximately in the same location in each room, with more kind of focus on the front to where students' attentions were gathered. And we used different species. We used Janet Craig, Dracaena, we had Dracaena marginata, colorama, and some anthuriums. And students from an ag science class were kind of trained, and they took care of that whole semester when the plants were in each of the classrooms. So this was pretty cool, and I'll talk about this in a moment. So here's the classrooms before we put the plants. The standard classrooms, they were all pretty much the same, and this is what they looked like. Then we came in, and with our Hilo extension agents and Hawaii extension agents, we went in and we just planted up each of the classrooms. Again, you can see here in the bottom, we focused on the workstations as well as the front of the class where their students' attentions would be focused on. So again, typical setup here. And this is how it looked like when we were finished with the different aspects of the class. Again, each one was done pretty much the same with the same amount of plants. Okay, so what we found out, it actually, with the semester with the plants, was statistically much greater. There was lower discipline reports throughout the math classrooms with all the students when the plants were there compared to when the plants were not in the classroom, and it was little less with the plants afterwards, the classroom. So there was much more discipline reports when there was no classes, standard, no plants in the classroom. When the plants were there, it significantly dropped statistically. And then actually there was an after effect that the next semester, there was still a little bit less. So it's indicating that these plants had some kind of a powerful effect on the students. Now, as far as test scores, this wasn't statistically significant, but there was a trend that when the plants were there and also after the plants were there, the test scores did improve. So it wasn't statistically significant, but there was a trend, which is really, really encouraging. Again, this is just static plants in the classroom for one semester. And seems to be some after effects after we took them out, which is pretty interesting. And this also correlates to some vacation and time with nature studies that show that after you go on vacation within a natural environment, there's like a lasting effect for a few months. So what this really means is that students scored actually higher on standardized testing and had less disciplinary problems when the plants were in the presence of the students in the classrooms. The students actually in their self-reports said that they had lower levels of stress when the plants were there. They felt more comfortable. They actually felt the air. They felt that the air was fresher and they were able to concentrate longer periods in math in these classrooms when the plants were there. The results indicate that plants actually help improve classrooms in many different ways, as well as students' feelings of well-being, as well as improve moods and academic achievements. Now that was really interesting is that, remember those ACT students that came in once a month to, actually they came in once a week during that time of the semester to check the plants for water, diseases and pests. They also measured the plants. Well, typically ACT students aren't the most coolest in the classroom, it seems, but these students' academic and social status actually raised, and they became really highly prized and sought after because they were like, quote unquote, the scientists take care of these plants. And the main thing was that we saw is that there was this decreased discipline problems when these plants were in the classrooms for across all 5 classrooms. So data also indicated that the indoor plants within the classrooms made an effective tool to increase positive student outcomes. They reduced student negative behaviors. They creating a responsibility within these students, specifically the AG students, and then having students gain a really independence and a status by helping maintain these plants and conducting scientific studies off them. And then also in the self-reports, teachers felt more refreshed and way less stressed when the plants were there. So this can be, again, that indication of biophilia that we talked about before, and that plants are really a part of us, they're not apart from us. In addition to an apple for the teacher, maybe we need to consider a plant or two within the classroom as well. Now, again, this goes back to, we are very culturally significantly linked to plants in our culture, and they have an economic impact. But one social thing that wasn't really anticipated is that there was actually a lot of negative discourse between the history, the English, and I think the sociology classrooms with math, because they were very upset that they didn't get plants in the classroom. So we had to explain to them that this was a study, this is why, and then everything was okay. But it was a very powerful discussion. They went right to the principal, and I guess it was quite heated. So again, that shows another aspect how powerful plants are. So here's the ACT class students that were taking care of the plants, and you see they're all smiling and they're happy because they had an amazing semester of plant care, and they learned a lot of great scientific aspects as well as care. And so I just like to kind of leave you with the notion that plants are really a foundation for our environment, our economics, but also for our classrooms as well as our industry here in Hawaii. So I think that if we really include nature and plants, it does a lot of beneficial things, especially in the classroom. We just saw that these tests integrate, that it helps kids improve academically, it lowers discipline issues, and it creates a really sense of independence and accomplishment. But I think when we don't do this effectively with design and plants, then things kind of fall apart, and that's not really what we want to do. So I have a lot of special thanks to Big Island Nursery Association and Greenpoint Nurseries, as well as my other colleagues. And if you have any questions, I think we have a minute or two, I'd be happy to share them. And thank you so much for letting me chat with you today about plants.
Thank you, Dr. Kaufman, for sharing the research on how plants can improve the classroom environment. A question has come in. On the tree leaf study, did it matter where the people are from? Because the mainland view yellow leaves differently.
Yeah, that's really a great question. Actually, the respondents were from all over the world in this study. And no, it didn't matter because, again, the main course with this, besides the preference study, was that could affect. And actually, there was some people that commented on that. But the psychophysiology study is actually a precognitive, so it's pre-thought. So I was able to record these physiological responses before people could think about it. So it's kind of like a human response to those. So that's a great question.
Response. May I make a suggestion for your future research? If you could have plans that would help with lesson plans or the general learner outcomes, the teachers would really appreciate that.
That'd be awesome. I'd be so happy to play in that.